Hey, welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, coming at you after a long week of being way too sick to do any type of work. I got another great guest for you tonight, as usual. But as usual, also, let's do some housekeeping. Some of my previous guests here, Jim Barry. He's a Michigan caregiver working for Kaba Technologies, which is a lighting company. Just had a fantastic interview with Jim. He's also a contributor to Fat Nugs magazine. If you haven't checked out any of that stuff, I advise you to do that. Also, another West Coast grower, Kerry Bennett, Hometown Cultivation. I thought that was a fantastic interview. Kerry's a veteran, and I love chopping it up with the veterans, as well as Jason Stefano, who's another veteran who worked with the NYPD for almost 20 years and worked for PharmaCann. Super great interview there. Shauna DeMattos, Bonita Money from Indica, my man Box Guts. I still love doing the Artist Spotlight series. And I do just want to talk about a couple of things I got coming up. I'm sorry, my schedule got a little fucked up here. Just, March was crazy, or February was crazy, and then I got a little sick. So on Sunday, the 3rd, I got Wolf Siegel coming on. This is going to be a fantastic interview. On March the 5th, I've got Chris Hudala, who's another lab guy. I love talking about this lab stuff. And then Thursday, the 7th, I got Tiffany Burt, who's someone I just connected with, and I had a fantastic talk with. And then Sunday, the 10th, you're going to not want to miss this one. Travis Cesarone, who's put together some great maps of the corporate influence in the cannabis industry. Yeah, I like that stuff. Infographics for the win. And tonight is a guy that I've been talking to for quite a while now. He's a Vermont guy, and I'm so excited to have him on the show because I've been talking to him for months, and it seems like he's built himself a nice little following here in Vermont, and he's really just super well respected in the cannabis space. And wham bam, without further ado, oh shit, here we go. Kyle Sheridan, Sunny Gardens VT. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, Caleb. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool. Before we do anything serious, would you mind, and I'm going to solo on you, but would you mind giving us a 5-minute life story?
Sure. Grew up in Rutland, Vermont, Rutland, Killington area. Lived in Killington from the age of about 19 to 27 or so. So I was up on the mountain during that times. My dad was a florist here in town. He had a flower shop. So I grew up around plants and flowers my whole life. But I was around cannabis since I was 15. So, more a smoker than I am a grower. But I've been in Vermont smoking cannabis for over 30 years and a grower for 4. So Instagram kind of came out when I started growing. I was suggested to use it as a tool to learn how to grow and connect with people. And here we are 4 years later. Pretty much my whole growing career was documented there. That's kind of the short story. I do sell cars here in town, and that's my career. That's my real job. This is just a passion, and I just love to do it.
My real job. And here, for the rest of this, I'm going to put you in the big box over here. Cool. And that's cool. So you were born and raised in Vermont, huh? You've been here the whole time?
The whole time. Yep.
Cool. I moved to Massachusetts for a minute, but I've been here most of the whole time as well.
I lived in Nantucket for one crazy summer.
No shit.
But that's good stories.
So, Kyle, the reason I invited you on the show, obviously, is because I've been following you for a minute, and I just love connecting with growers and talking about growing weed. And it seems like, boy, you've really, and I was surprised to learn, based on your experience level, boy, you got a great following on social media, and everybody seems to have a ton of respect for you. And I'd like to just maybe dive in here. And what I'd like to do first is ask you, as I do with all the growers, is ask you about your first grow and how that went.
Yeah, love to. So 2020 April, COVID lockdown. I'm in the middle of closing on my house, and I was able to do so because I was able to keep working during the lockdown. Car sales were considered essential service, so was able to close on the home. And my good friend Windsor Craft Cannabis, he's on Instagram. He brought me over a plant for my housewarming gift. And I didn't have anything set up yet. I just moved in. I was in boxes and everything, but it was springtime. So I put it in one of those big blue totes, usually put like soccer balls in, on your, bunch of different outdoor equipment. I drilled some holes in the bottom. Actually, a friend from mine at work gave it to me because I didn't know what I was doing. I went to the local garden store and bought, I think it was like 2 bags of Costa Maine. I was recommended to use that. And it was wedding cake was the plant. I grew it on my porch, and I literally brought it in and out of my house. If it was raining, I'd bring it into my kitchen. I was like, I didn't know really what I was doing. You should see. I'll post pictures of the plant after. It was like this huge, crazy bush that had like weird arms and almost looked like a Christmas tree, but it was, not trained properly. I didn't know how to defoliate or anything, but I grew this humongous plant. It was like 8 feet tall. And then I actually paid somebody to dry it, which I can't believe I'm saying that now, but I was so worried about that process going wrong because I knew how important it was. I knew a lot of people who knew a lot of stuff, and I had people surrounding me with all kinds of knowledge. So I knew what mistakes not to make, and I had this guy dry it for me, and he used one of those cryo cure things or whatever they are. Not a Canatrol. This was before that, I think. But anyway, it wasn't bad. People liked it, and that just inspired me to grow. And then winter came, and I decided to get a tent and started to grow in one little tent in my basement, and try indoor.
And I believe you said you sort of have grown up around plants. And I'm curious if that has translated at all, at least giving you some kind of an idea of how to be around them, or at least a general feeling for like how to not murder them or something like
Yeah. So my dad was a florist, primarily he did cut flowers, but he also sold houseplants. We had houseplants and lots of them at my house. So I got really good at watering with my dad, and just picking off dead leaves and just simple stuff like that. He would teach me how to not overwater, not underwater, what plants needed what. He would raise orchids, and we would go to a wholesaler in New Hampshire together, and I would go to the greenhouse with them. And I always just loved that feel of warm and that extra oxygen rich air. And but I never wanted to be a florist. Everybody was always like, oh, you want to take over your dad's shop? I'm like, no. It's holidays, it's funerals, it's weddings, it's dress, they're pretty, they smell good, but I didn't really want to be in the business. And my sisters now are florists for the local shop here in town, which is cool because it's in the family. But I always thought it would be really cool if my dad grew wheat. Um, None of that ever lined up, like the way it worked. I could never grow while he was alive. He could never grow or cared to grow when he was alive. Um, I always wanted to grow weed. It fascinated me. Like I used to have High Times magazines, and I always loved cannabis because it made me feel good. And I thought the whole process of it was amazing. And I thought, the mystique of growing in the outdoors in Vermont, like the guerrilla growers, in respect to all those guys that did that. I know they lugging water in the woods and, growing stinky weed when it wasn't cool, I mean, it was cool, but it really wasn't. You get a lot of trouble back then for that. So, a lot of respect for that. I never had land. I never had access to it. I never owned my own home where I could grow until 2020, and that's when the laws lined up. I mean, that's when Vermont made it legal to do so. So,
And I do want to ask you a little bit if you just, and I like to ask all the guys who are like mixed cultivators, like Dan at Rebel Grown, about the differences between growing outdoor, growing indoor, and also, maybe the different sort of mediums. And hold on, I do want to do this too. Also, I'm with Kyle Sheridan from Sunny Gardens VT. I'm supposed to do this every 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, I'd like to get your perspective on, the different climates, outdoor versus indoor, and also the different, medium for growing it, if you wouldn't
yeah.
mind.
So I've grown outdoor as long as I've grown indoor, and I think Vermont's a cool climate to grow cannabis in. Every region is different. I mean, you can group states together, but literally they break up New England in different regions. And, you're supposed to grow differently, different vegetables based on different things, so everybody's different. Vermont has a short season, a sometimes very wet season.
Sometimes, like this year, yeah.
Last year was crazy. That was the third rainiest year in the history of Vermont that they've been recording it. I don't know how many years that is, but it's over 100. It was crazy. I lost more plants than I took in. I basically harvested one good plant. I struggled last year, but I hadn't struggled any of the other years until last year. So, and I know it was pretty widespread, so it wasn't just me. But I was able to finish one really good plant, and outdoor is different than indoor. Good sun grown is some of the best medicine. It really is. There's something different about it. Not really sure. There's a lot of factors that go into why, but you can't just pick one thing. The soil, though, that's a big one. People grow outdoors, but people don't always grow in the ground. And there's a difference. I mean, if you're buying bagged soil, put it in a pot and growing outside, you're getting the Vermont climate, but you're not really getting the Vermont earth or the soil. And if you get to grow in really good Vermont soil, I think it's some of the best soil really in the world. If you think about how much it gets broken down, composted because of the seasons, how old the minerals are because of how old the mountains are. If you look into the history of the geography of the land, so to speak, I think that's one of the reasons Vermont has some of the tastiest outdoor wheat, is the soil.
And you talked about, I think on the phone the other day, we were talking about building your own soil, and maybe that's like a good transition into that topic.
Yeah, sure. You can just dig a hole in the ground, but if it's not good soil to begin with, you need to make it good. Um, a lot of people's properties, if they live at their house, those that was built up on different levels of foundations of, they brought in dirt, and clay or whatever, but to make soil better, you need to add in things and microbes in life, basically. And when you see bugs and when you see worms and when you see life, and those are signs that your soil is good. So to make your soil good, sometimes you got to go buy bags of compost or buy worms. You know, you got to give the reasons of the for the worms to come in the soil. So I don't know if anybody's been following my grow outdoors. I have a compost bin built into my bed. So I throw my food scraps into this plastic bin in the ground that's built in, and it has holes in it, and the worms come in to eat and break down the food, and then they can go back into the soil, and you got all the different little shredders and centipedes and millipedes and all those bugs and isopods that break down and complete the cycle of the food web. And that's what you want when you're growing. Having grass on top, cover crop, that's also good. So, and that's what I try to mimic inside. If you look at my living soil bed in my house, it's got grass, it's got winter rye growing out of it, but there's worms in there. And then inside that bed, I have a tower that I built. It's actually a protein bottle that I put in the corner, put a bunch of holes in that. I put my coffee grounds, banana peels, certain things that compost well, and the worms eat that. I have happy worms that go back into the bed, and then they produce worm castings, which is some of the best nutrients you can get. Natural fertilizer, and you don't have to buy that. You buy the worms, and if they're happy, they'll reproduce and stay in there, and you won't have to get them again. You can just simply top dress, recover crop every time that you put in a new plant, because that soil stays. It doesn't, I don't throw it out. So I'm on my fourth plant in the same bed of soil. That makes sense.
And from what I've heard from some of the other living soil growers here in Vermont, I know Derek at Bushy Beard's a guy I've talked to a lot about
He
this.
gets
It says that it might take a little bit of time to dial in that soil, but then once you've got it dialed in, you can just reuse it over and over again.
It does take time, and it gets better with time. So there's a place in Las Vegas right now, Green Life or Green Point or Green something. They're on their 36th cycle in the same soil. So they've grown 36 runs in the same soil. That's amazing. The amount of mycorrhizae, the mycelium network, the natural fungi that's in there, and the microbes that are in that soil compared to my soil that's only been 4 cycles, it's different. They have the best weed in Vegas, hands down. I mean, it's the best. And aged, good living soil, I've always been told from the beginning, is the best way to grow. So I've always done that. Like when I started, the guy that brought me over the plant, he told me to follow the White River Grow Pro formula, their program. I'm sure you know Kendall.
Stephanie and Kevin. Yeah, sure.
He knows what he's doing. I got their recipe sent, and I've tried to follow that, and I've used their dry amendments since day one, and earth boxes too. Another style I've always liked. If I'm not doing a living soil bed, I prefer to flower in an earth box. Those are slick.
And I still love to have Stephanie on the show. If you're listening, Stephanie, I don't know Kendall as well, but we've met in passing.
Oh, he would be an unbelievable guest. He's got more passion than anybody, and he is probably one of the best growers in Vermont. His grow shop now has a dispensary in it. I forget they're calling it the Hidden Grove or something like that. My buddy went, got his flower. He says it's fantastic. I saw a picture of it, and it's got to be. I mean, he won the Headies last year. I was in the Headies last year, and he won.
My dude Luke from Omerta Genetics.
Yeah,
sorry.
Props to Luke at Omerta Genetics for making Seroquel. Most people in Vermont know that strain. That's a doozy. I've never smoked it. I just hear everything about it. I am personally growing it right now. I have a male that good friend in Growcast. The Growcast community gave me a male. He didn't want it. He was going to throw it out. He knew I was making seeds and started working a little bit. So he said, "Hey, you want this?" And I said, "Yeah." I'm like, I hear all kinds of stuff about that. And it's the stinkiest plant, one of the nicest plants I've seen in my short career. So I'm excited.
Kyle Sheridan, Sunny Gardens. Before we get on to the breeding, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you was about, it sounds like you're into some of these Korean natural farming ideas. And I heard other people talking about making like fermented fruit juices and stuff like that. I'm curious if you're doing anything like that.
I am. It's a rabbit hole. It's cool. KNF and JDAM. There's two different forms of natural farming and ways to make nutrients with a lot of the stuff that you have around the house and that you're throwing away that can make amazing nutrients where you can save lots of money. It's fun. They work. You're closing the loop because you're not buying bottles. Number one, they're made of plastic, and I can get into the whole thing, but when you buy
a bottle
off Amazon, it may only cost you $10, but how much did it cost the world to get you that plastic bottle of nutrients that is mostly water, probably? Anything you can do to stop that, support local shops, drive to the local shop if you can, try not to get things shipped, try not to buy things off these big, huge places, and then make your own stuff. It's fun. You can start out just by making lactic acid bacteria. And I mean, that's the stuff you take because you need probiotics in your stomach. Soil needs probiotics.
How do you make that? Will you tell us how those are made?
Yeah. So what you do is you get rice and you rinse the rice and you keep the rinse water. And that has starch in it. Right? I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to get into all that. But anyway, you get the rice water. And then you put that in your cabinet with a paper towel over it and a rubber band just to keep things out of it for a couple of weeks. And that technically ferments. And then, because of the starches in the rice. And then, geez, I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's okay. Hey, and I talked about this with Eduardo Jaime, and he said he said, this was a great quote. He said,
Okay,
I'm
I'm sorry. I'm back.
he said, I'm Puerto Rican. We're born knowing how to make rice. And he said they
So
keep
then
the
you put
rice
in
fermented.
milk
Yeah.
or goat milk or, whatever you got. I once used, what was it? The unfiltered, unpasteurized cow milk, the raw. That's
Nice.
like the shit. That's got a lot of fat in there, more fat than the pasteurized stuff at the store. But the store stuff still works. So when you put it in, and there's a certain ratio of rice water to milk, it's 2-to-1, and then you put that back in your cupboard, leave it for a couple weeks, and then you'll get a ball of basically cheese. It's like sticky ass yogurt ass cheese stuff. You can feed that to your livestock. They always tell you to do that because you don't want to throw away anything. Or you can put it in your garden, I guess. But then the liquid you have left over, the yellow liquid, that's lap. And that is the basis of a lot of things. You can make ferments with that. You can foliar spray with that. You can add that into your soils.
You can spray with that.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Smelly cheese water is what I call it, Some people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And then like IMO, like that's another thing where that's where you take cooked rice, you put it in a cedar box, you go put it next to a magical tree that's got a dying log that's got a lot of shit on it, and then 2 weeks later you come back and the whole thing's covered in this white fuzz, which is mycelium, and then you take that and that you can make fertilizer out of by adding it into brown sugar, and then you take that, and after that all does its thing, you add it into water, and then you're adding in indigenous microorganisms from your surrounding area into your soils, whether it's outside or inside.
And you just did my next segue for me, which was about the water inputs. I like that you keep doing this, Kyle. You just like running the whole conversation for me.
Sorry.
No, I like that.
Bad habit of talking. That's what
It's a great segue because I have a buddy, right? He home grows up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and the St. Johnsbury water is fucking disgusting. If you've ever been up to St. Johnsbury and drank the water, it tastes like metal and chemicals. All right, you can taste it. And I know a lot of guys are using RO on their water, which is going to remove everything. But also, I've heard from some people that it could remove things that are beneficial to the plants. So I'm curious to hear your take on the water input aspect.
Yeah, I went to a breeding class, and the guy Jordan from Growcast gave me a link to look up your city's water and the test results. And let me tell you, it's not cool. There are more cancer-causing things at levels that are so far above acceptable. It's absolutely ridiculous. Rutland water is they put fluoride in it. They put a lot of chlorine in it. It comes down from Chittenden Dam, it goes into whatever. But then we have a septic system here, and we clean our septic water. We have a sewage treatment plant, all that shit. And we just got a letter, or I got an email saying, our water's not that great right now, but you can drink it. So after that, I invested it in RO, and I was, there's the taking out of everything in the water, so it doesn't have an electrical current, and I don't get into that EC much or pH too much, because if I do use nutrients, the nutrients don't require pHing. Props to Pikachi Earthworks for that. I do use their line of products in their Micro Plus, but when I'm flowering, I'm usually in soil that I build and doing it with the living soil. So Little slightly different. But anyway, I got an RO system that also has a separate filter that puts back in minerals.
Oh,
So,
interesting. And what type of minerals does it put back in?
it's just it's like calcium and magnesium and like little trace minerals that you need. I mean, that stuff's good. If you don't have that stuff, your teeth will get soft. And, that's why they put fluoride in the water in Rutland. Is for your teeth, but
Allegedly.
I don't think, yeah, allegedly. I don't think plants like fluoride. Fluoride, people and plants are very similar. We need a lot of the same things, but I don't think either of us need fluoride. Again, not a scientist. So.
Yeah, and so here I'm gonna slap this up again.
Ooh.
Kyle Sheridan, Sunny Gardens, VT. I also would like to ask you about, when you're doing your indoor thing, maybe what type of lights you're running.
Well, I've only been growing for 4 years, so I didn't get to grow with high pressure sodium or metal halides or all that stuff. I'm sure I could at this point. I could do anything I want, I guess, but they create a lot of heat and use a lot of electricity and energy. So I've always used LEDs. I went from quantum boards and still have those to the bar setup, with the big driver that's got the 8 different bars, a 10 bar. I have a 10 bar Mammoth. I absolutely love. I prefer to promote Mammoth lights over any other light. It's what these guys use, and he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. We all know Nick and love Nick. So Mammoth is a local company too. They're out of right by Albany. So like if you got an issue, they're on it and they're sending you a replacement. And when you call, you're talking to someone like a couple hours away from you. So
Oh shit.
I like that. When I buy a product, do this. Before you buy a product, email them. See if they email you back. If they don't buy it from them. Like deal with people who will communicate with you. Communication's key. And try to work with local people and companies in the United States if you can. I know a lot of this stuff is sourced out of our country because of costs of operation and all that, but make your stuff at home. Think about that. Think about what you're doing when you're buying something and who you're promoting and how much it costs and if it pollutes the world. And if you can do anything to heal the world by making it at home, give it a shot. Here's my cat. This is Bodie.
There's a cat. All right.
Cool. I was like, my biggest fear was that he was going to come up like 100 times. So
my first interview I ever did, lady's cat showed me her asshole. So it wouldn't be the first time.
Here
we go.
Oh, there we go.
Kyle, I want to get. Whoa, go ahead.
Sorry. No.
Well, I want to dive into the genetics, man, and that seems like it's your thing in these breeding projects. And I tried some of that ethereal sunset. I thought that was some lovely herb, and it seems like for only 4 years in, man, you're really well underway and cranking out some incredibly respectable reefer here.
Thank you very much. Humbled to hear that. I've been surrounded by really good people who knew what to do, told me what to do. I ask a lot of questions, so probably too many. I'm sure I've annoyed the shit out of some people, but
me too. I'm the same way.
I've made a lot of mistakes. Not everybody sees everything that goes wrong. I don't exactly highlight everything that doesn't work, but as far as genetics go, in 2020 when I started growing, I got on Instagram and I started buying up seeds like crazy, like baseball cards. it was like a hobby. I was buying seeds. I knew I wasn't even going to grow. I was just buying them because I liked the pack. I liked the person. I wanted to promote them. I was getting in giveaways. I was winning giveaways. I was doing waffles, and I was winning waffles. I was like, oh my God. Next thing you know, I needed a fridge for all these seeds. I mean, I had so many seeds, and I had another friend who had even more seeds. We still do. We have more seeds than anyone we know. All of the people we know combined could probably grow in their lifetime. It's absurd. So, you know, I just started popping packs and giving away packs and making connections. And I started talking to breeders. I had friends that were breeders, and they encouraged me to try to make seeds. And I don't even want to say I'm a breeder, because all I've done so far is take a couple plants that I thought were nice or someone else thought was nice, and I put them together and they did their thing. And that's it. I really don't want to take any credit for that. Ethereal Sunset was, I had a friend, Chaz B, he put me in a giveaway. I won the giveaway. The seeds I won from ISNW selections in sickness and wealth. The Ethereal seeds, I then had a giveaway myself, which Chaz B, my buddy, won that giveaway. He grew that plant. He then brought me down a cut of that plant. I then grew it. Loved the terps. The terps were like bubble gum and strawberry and just different. And the plant was visually like just stunning. And the weed was good, you know, but there was just something about this plant. And I had this other plant, the Copper Sunset from Heart and Soil. And Brett I've been buying his seeds since day one. Loved everything he's done. And he has a lot of landrace strains. And he had this stuff called Copper Sunset that I bought, and I popped it a couple years after I bought it. And that was Copper, Ken, and Peruvian Punch. And, you know, had that landrace in there. I entered the Copper Sunset in the headies. It didn't do very well, but I thought it was really good. And I had a lot of people tell me it was really good. So I was pretty proud of it. And then I had a male of that. So it just timed right. And I had that cut that I'd kept that Chuck gave me. And voila, we made Ethereal Sunset. And that, you know, after the plant grew better than both of the other plants were, you know, it was like, once you realize that you could take two plants and make a better one, then I was just like, oh my God, I have all these seeds and I got to pop them. And I got to find these plants and figure out which ones need to go with which ones, because I'm going to make better plants. You know, it was like this thing that just sparked my passion. You know, I still grow from my head, but at one point I was going to the CCB meetings because I wanted to be in the recreational market and be one of a lot of people growing weed and trying to make it work. And I would have probably had to give up a really good career to do so. Maybe not, but I think I would have, and I think I would have lost my passion in the plant because of all the red tape and all the stuff that you're hearing now. You know, the growing pains were going to come. I knew there was going to be a lot of changes in the laws, and I didn't love everything I was hearing right away. But that's where I met so many people. And that's, you know, a lot of the people I met taught me things like Nick and Derek and Bushybeard and, you know, just people. So that's where it happened.
Kyle Sheridan, Sunny Gardens. And once again, you've done my next segue for me. I love this, Kyle. You're good. It's like
No problem.
feel where we're going. No, and that's what I wanted to ask you about next was, your sort of your take on the adult use market that's developing here in Vermont. And I've talked to a lot of growers who have gotten into the market. I've also talked to a lot of guys who said, "Hey, maybe this isn't for me." And I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
I think Vermont's market is amazing. I think the products in the dispensaries is amazing. There's a lot of talent here, and that might be the problem. You can only smoke so much weed, or it can get sold, and eventually there's going to be an influx, I think, or a surplus where that's where the guys that aren't really cutting it probably won't cut it. Now that I'll be honest, I did not visit a dispensary for over the first year. I didn't even go. I kind of threw my nose up because I didn't get in the market and I wasn't part of it. And I feel bad that I did that. But again, why would I go to a store and spend money on apples if I got a basement full of really good apples that I made? And I don't even care how good the stuff is that I grew or that you grew. If I grew it and I got it, I'm going to smoke my stuff. But I saw a lot of good stuff being put on the shelves, and I knew I was eventually going to try it. And people were bringing me over pre-rolls, and I was smoking them, and they're good, but it wasn't, half the time my stuff was a little better, or sometimes the stuff was better than mine. And I would admit that, no problem. I'm prideful of my flower, but I know good flower. I've been smoking a long time. And there's some stuff on the shelves right now that I wouldn't smoke. I wouldn't spend my money on. I wouldn't probably smoke it if you paid me, because I don't have to, and I don't want to sound like a jerk, but it is what it is. And I don't know how everything's grown. The only stuff I've smoked so far were from people I knew. Like I went to Nick's place, tried some of his stuff. I saw his grow.
I saw you visiting a few local spots.
Yep.
It looks like you were at
Yep.
pictures. Yeah.
Maple Rose. I know the guy. Jimmy T. He's an old school grower from our area. You can get his flower at Cloud9. His Pablo's Revenge is out of control.
Cool.
It's almost too much. Like you better be ready for bed. But the edibles, the rosin that's getting made somewhere on the mountain, the guy that's making rosin for them, Birdman stuff. I can't wait to try his stuff. I was chatting with him today. I know his stuff's going to be fire. Just looking at some of his charts and hearing from some of my friends that have tried, that they tried this Motor Breath rosin and they said it was just out of sight. So, I don't think we need as many dispensaries as we have, and I don't think we need as many growers as we have. I think you gotta, be socially responsible when you're issuing licenses. It's great that you're giving everybody the opportunity, but if you know that the fallout rate is going to be a pretty big number, I don't know if you should be really issuing those licenses and feel good about it.
And in a sense, maybe setting people up here.
I know guys that lost their ass this summer. They put everything into, getting a license, and all they did was grow outdoor, and they lost 80% of their plants. And it's not like it wasn't their fault that he lost their license. I'm not blaming the CCB for that, but like there's going to have to be some regulation of that, I feel, to keep everybody in business. Right.
And it's in talks right now. They're
And,
already talking.
And I remember this quote from Derek from Bushy at, I think it was one of the meetings up at Gaston's at Tyler. Yeah, I think it was his house. Anyway, I was with Ebo talking with Derek, and he was saying, after a couple of years, there's going to be only really about a dozen big ones left. And I thought that was crazy, but we'll see where we go,
The attrition rate is pretty high in with any type of startup business, and especially in this climate with all these nickels and dimes and fees and crazy rules.
And I went to these meetings. A lot of these meetings were about getting money for this. Not everybody is wealthy or had money in their family, and I won't use the word trust fund, because I know some people are using that kind of money to run their stuff. But like, there's people that are probably going to go out of business and owe a lot of money to these trusts or these hedge funds or whatever they are, whatever you want to call them, the people that loan them the money.
Private equity, a lot of that. Yeah. Hedge funds, private equity, or, your mom and dad.
Yeah. I wish everybody the best of luck, and I wish everybody could get their stuff on the shelves, but there's only so many shelves, and those places are loaded right now.
And this is a tricky one, Kyle. I've talked to a bunch of people about this, about potentially capping the licenses, which I think maybe would set the state up for some kind of lawsuit, some kind of anti-competitive lawsuit where people say, oh, we thought this was an open market. Now you're going to cap licenses. However, it does seem like it's becoming saturated very quickly. So this is kind of a touch and go situation here very early on in the market, it seems like.
Well, I mean, has it happened everywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great point.
I mean, there's certain states that have done better than other states. I think Maine and Vermont are doing a good job when it comes to products on the shelves. I think probably every state needs to work on the regulation of things. And I hate that word because that's where we get into, lots of stuff that I don't even like talking about. So, but at the end of the day, it's a blessing that we can go into a store and get amazing flower. I was thinking about that today, being that I've been in this state and smoking weed as long as I've always had to get it. And I was pretty good at that. Some people were better than others. And there was always different levels. There was usually, in Vermont back a while ago, there was always like 3 different levels. There's the bad, the mids, and the kind bud. Those were the people that were growing it. That was kind bud back then, when you occasionally got that kind of stuff, and this was before beasters and all that stuff happened. But, I was just thinking about the fact that to get good weed a long time ago, you needed to know somebody and have a relationship with that person, or know someone else that did. You couldn't just drive down the street and go into these places and have it. And it blew my mind, just because I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And when I'm going to these dispensaries, you see some young people there, but a lot of the people there are older. There's 60, 70-year-old men and women that are getting edibles, and they didn't even know where to get stuff back then. You know, they probably never got around to smoking good weed. I can't even imagine what they feel like now, smoking the flower that's out there, you know. And we, you know, there's, you know, and I still feel that weed was stronger back. The really good weed seemed to be stronger back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know what it was. I don't think anybody really tested it to know. Some people think it's the lights. I talked to a buddy about the fact that they think it's the lights. Some people think it's the hybridization of, you know, everybody's, you know, made seeds and, you know, kind of bred out the really strong old cultivars that made you feel like you felt back then. Maybe it's because our tolerance has gone up so high because the THC just keeps getting ratcheted up. I don't know, you know, but I do remember the days of getting strawberry cough and sour diesel in Killington in the early 2000s, and there was no stinkier, better weed than that, and that I can remember. And anybody that lived in Killington during those times will remember this. You know, I call it the ski house skunk. You know, pretty much everybody's ski house smelled like skunk. You pull into their driveway, you get out of their car, and you could smell it. And there were several people in the area that were growing it. And the old strawberry cough history, which I won't go down, that was around the area back then, and it was cool.
I love that shit. That's one of my favorite flavors ever, along with the super silver haze. I wish someone would bring that back.
Yeah, check out Relic. He does a lot of work with the super silver haze. He just released it again. I think it was an F5 or something. He's got some really good stuff. I've used some of his work in some of my plants. But anyway,
I got one question left for you, Kyle, and I want to just slap this up again real quick. You know, Sunny Gardens, Vermont, Kyle Sheridan. Pleasure having you on here tonight, Kyle.
Thank you so much.
I got one comment here from a Daniel O'Hare, and my last question, he said, I'm here. And my last question was about White Clouds Dan.
That's Dan.
Is that Dan? Okay, word
up.
up.
Blow you up, Dan, but that's my boy. Dan's a great guy. And he was a member of Growcast who I met. We were messaging each other and eventually realized that we both lived in Vermont. And then we got together. We went to the Hetties together. It's the first time I met him. Was at 2 years ago's Hetties, the one I wasn't in, but that was the one that inspired me to get in. And he's got some amazing plants and just has, I think, a knack for finding good phenos. And I've worked with him. We've made some plants together. We haven't released anything really officially yet, but you can get some of my genetics on his website. It's www.whitecloudsgenetics.com. Canna Planners is the one that made the website. I think it's all done. They were still just working on finishing up the credit card processor. It's kind of a pain in the ass, I guess. But you can go there, or you can message him through Instagram or message me through Instagram, and we can direct you. Also, my seeds are in several of the dispensaries locally.
Tell us which ones, please, Kyle.
Up north, go to Gaston, see my boy Ebo. They got some Tussin and Ethereal Sunset up there. Nice. At somewhere on the mountain, they have Tussin and Ethereal Sunset as well. And at Cloud 9 in Fairhaven, they are the only place to get the fizzy lifting drink. Exclusive for those guys. I did that for them because good friends with the manager there, DJ Dirty D, as everybody knows him on Insta.
Word up.
Great grower and good guy, and he's been around the scene for a long time. So a lot of respect to him. And the Posebutt family. I met him. He's part of the management there. Great people. I should be there on 420, by the way. Vendor thing, meeting people, just talking about stuff. Should be a lot of people there, so that should be fun.
Kyle, I'm about out of shit here. I want to thank you again here. I'm going to pull myself back up, normal size squares. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Oh, would you tell us about, I saw you just did a podcast the other day. In case anybody would like to watch that, would you tell us where they could maybe find that?
It should be on YouTube eventually. It was with Terp Fiend. He has also not been feeling well. You guys might have got the same thing. He's been struggling. So he said it would be uploaded sooner or later. And that should be up soon. So you'll be able to just Google that. YouTube, Terp Fiend, OG Sesh, Sunny Gardens, and should pop up sooner or later. And I'll post it once I know.
Do you have any, before we get out of here, do you have any last words or shameless plugs or other shout outs you'd like to give? Because I'd like to leave a minute for the guest.
I'd like to just thank all my followers. And I got a group of guys that are in a chat that talk with pretty much every day. We bounce ideas and problems against each other, and those guys are good. Give them a shout out. That's the family of fire tester group. That's about it. I think I got everybody. Definitely check out White Clouds Genetics, excuse me. And we'll have some stuff coming up here soon, and hopefully I have some of everything I release is going to be nice and slow. Single releases. I'm not going to do anything big. It's going to be, just mostly for fun. But plan on making some really good plants for people to grow. And I want to make them available for people. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
I'm going to sign it off here. Kyle Sheridan, Sunny Gardens. Tom Durfee, if you're listening, I'd still like to get this in my email on audio.
Devils in the details, and the details are in the fine print.
Peace. Good night, guys.
Peace.